Talk about the decision to get into the thrift store business to find Souls Harbor back in the early days.
Okay, well that was part of the original concept. Jake's idea was that these people were homeless, but they had skills of some sort, and so he would he would collect furniture or other household items and bring it to a central location and have these men refurbish it and work it and so forth. It was part of the original concept, the idea being that it helped the men learn a skill or have a work ethic and also generate money by the sale of the items to run the harbor, to run the expenses and so forth, which is what we've done for 55 years or so.
Talk about the shelter, how it grew from the old blue house from 3 or 4 men to the current facility today, which holds up to 60 men.
Well, the original structure was a milk shed. And I think that Jake actually took some of them in and started off with 2 or 3 people, and he actually had them in his own home, I think, for a while. And then Miss Stenridge took exception to it and ran them off. But anyway, by that time, they had the property, and there was quite a bit of construction around, and they moved in. Best I remember, 3 houses: the blue one, the one, the superintendent's house now, and then the one that we sold when we built the dormitory. So those were the original moves, and then of course the need for a bigger structure was needed almost immediately, and there was expansion on Central Expressway, and Jake went down and talked to a contractor down there about taking down a building for the material, and from that material they built the first building, which included the mess hall and the kitchen and also as a meeting room, and the upstairs was a dormitory where we had about 28 beds. We went to, from that, we came along by the time I got there, let's see, we built concrete buildings was next, and Whittle was involved in that. They made it out of rejected double T beams that were made for the state highway department, and for one reason or another the highway department would reject them, and of course what do you do with that kind of deal? So Whittle made a deal with the contractor, had them, and used those to construct the second dormitory. It's a 2-story affair with meeting rooms upstairs and offices and a meeting room downstairs. And that lasted for a considerable time. Then when the warehouse burned, one of my board members said, somebody's trying to tell us something, we need to get the men out of that wood building. So we talked to Johnny, and we got things going, and that's when we started on the metal dormitory. That was about 04.
The most difficult times for Souls Harbor.
Well, I'd say Souls Harbor has always had difficult times of some sort all the time. The worst time probably was, first worst time was when Jake died, and until Johnny Thomas got there in about 84 or 85. And when he came on board, then the whole operation improved, took a step up, and worked very well until he died in 2006. The stressful time for me was when Johnny died, and then until we wallered around and finally got some help, some good help, and people on the board that could bring people of talent in. And as a result, we have Brett at this time, who's done quite a remarkable job of getting Souls Harbor known about the community. We've been there 55 years, and there were people 5 miles from us that didn't even know who we were, or where we were, or why we were.
Have any funny stories about Souls Harbor?
Well, I had to stretch a little to find that. The one that was really pretty good and naturally Pat remembered it and I didn't. But one night, one of the men came in. This is when Johnny Thomas was running, pretty early in the deal. One of the big guys come in. Johnny was about 5'8", and not big, but he was fit. He was muscular and moved about quite well. But this big guy came in and was getting loud with Johnny, and they were in the dormitory, I guess. And anyway, Johnny stepped forward to him, and the guy backed up a little bit. Well, the bed was right behind him. He tripped on the bed, and when Johnny saw what was happening, Johnny shoved him, and the guy went over and flipped over the bed. Well, you're talking about your rumors now, and we got stories. The guy swore that Johnny hit him and knocked him over, and he showed Johnny due respect for the rest of his days. And the story got out, like you say, in the dormitory, and Johnny knocked that man over the bed. You know, pretty awesome.
No.
Did you ever hear this? You remember Wally, right?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Did you ever hear that story? Now this is, I don't know if it's fact or myth, but I knew Wally was from New Jersey originally. You knew that, right? Had you met Wally or not? He was there for like off and on 35 years.
Yeah, we knew him.
Yeah.
But the story I heard was he wanted to go back to New Jersey, and so he checked, you know, American Airlines or Braniff, and the flights were so expensive. So, and then he looks at Greyhound, and it's expensive. And then he figures out, hey, if I ship myself in a box, it only cost me like $40 or $30 like that. Did you ever hear this story?
No, I never heard
told
that.
me this story, and that he actually shipped himself. Had the guys in the warehouse call UPS. UPS came out, shipped them, and I think he got as far as Kansas City or something. And they figured out there was somebody in the box or a live person in the box, and they shipped them back. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think it's a funny story.
It's a good story.
Tell us about the fire that hit the warehouse in the late 90s.
All right. It was in 98. They typically had the work area where they reworked the appliances in the center of the building. And when you had these defrost refrigerators in there, they'd work them over and check them over, and then they'd run them overnight to see that they were functional and operational. And this particular evening, everything was fine, and the last man out left about 8:30. And at 9 o'clock, the place was completely engulfed. Now this was the roof on this building was built up asphalt. The trusses were welded pipe. The siding was aluminum siding, which is typical. In a defrost cycle on a refrigerator, if the relay sticks, it continues to heat. Where it's either timed or temperature to trip in and out, it never gets to a critical level. But this one stuck, and it got to a critical level. And then when it finally fire broke through to get air, then it was like an explosion. Everything was so hot and brittle and ready to go that it did. And it burned the warehouse down. It damaged the little blue house to some extent. And then the floor was blistered some. It could have been really a bad situation, but nobody was hurt. It was property, and fortunately we had insurance. I told you that story. So we were able to rebuild and have a very nice structure now as a result.
Is there any former or current resident that made a positive impression on you?
Well, those that have made it always are impressionable, and this gentleman right here is a good example. And I think Johnny Thomas probably is the most outstanding person that I dealt with, because he, I think, truly loved the harbor and appreciated what it had done for him. And he drove it like it was his mule. I mean, and it was. He made a decision. He and I did things for it. I said, when he asked me something, and we did much very big, we'd go to the board and said, this is done, this is what we did, and we want your approval. So it was easier to ask for approval than it was, or apologize than it was to get approval ahead of time. But I think Johnny is by far the most outstanding one. Neil Wolf is one that looks like has finally blossomed into a good story. But Neil is a good soul at heart, and wasn't above working me. But a bunch of them out there did. So anyway, that's my problem. But, he's a good man, and I think he's turned where he's a good for you.
Yes.
That you need.
What is your vision for Souls Harbor, say 5 years from here, 10 years, 20 years from now, LB?
I would so much love the harbor to have a new mess hall. This other thing is this building is 55 years old. It's wood construction. It's got the kitchen in it, and it's not a good thing. I think even if we built it, a new mess hall, we might still use this building for a recreation hall or something non-threatening where you don't have heat or electricity. We almost burned it down electrically one time, and it was a non-event by 20 minutes or something like that. Certainly, if we get a new dormitory, then the next step would be another dormitory. If we get a new mess hall, the next step is a dormitory. We also have got to have a better structure, financial structure. We need to have more stores. They need to be better managed. And then we also, if we can get to the next level where our bookkeeping and our hiring and all the other requirements of these outside people with money demand that they will bring money in here where we can afford to have more professional help to make it progress. This is the Lord's work. Whittle said that many times, that it has survived in spite of itself, and I would only say amen to that.